Welcome everyone to the webinar. I am Stacy Ricola. I'm part of the Customer Success Management team here at Unanet. And today we're going to be covering ways to brush up your skills with Unanet's project tools, as well as review easier methods to find and update the data for your projects. Now, if you have questions, we ask that you type them in the questions box. It's on your webinar dashboard, and then we're going to review all of those at the end. Now, this webinar will be recorded and available within a week in case you want to review it again or share it with someone else on your team. All of our webinars are located on our Knowledge Center. You just simply type in the webinar title in the search box. I do want to add, if you do experience audio or visual issues, just drop off and rejoin the webinar. I would like to give a quick recap of the CSM role. Your Customer Success Manager is your main point of contact within Unanet. We are here to help all of you take the confusion out of who you need to contact when you have a question or a need. We also want to make sure that you're getting all of the benefits of your Unanet license type. Now, we do this by making sure we keep you up to date on added functionality and by scheduling customer success reviews, which used to be called account reviews, just to assure that you're using all the functionality that's currently available to you. And of course, you can reach out to us for additional licenses, upgrades, and any type of additional service. Now, I'd like to introduce you to our presenter for today. We are happy to have Gwen Hess with us to present tips and tricks for project managers. Hello, Gwen, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay,
take it away.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today for this webinar. As Stacy said, my name is Gwen Hess, and I'm a senior technical trainer within Unanet University. And today we're going to be going over some of the items that we know are things that project managers would like to have a little bit more information on, or just sort of review some things that maybe you haven't used as much and want to really know a little more about using them. So these are our primary agenda items that we're going to be going over today. We're going to take a look at project administrator roles and what the capabilities are within them, because your title might be project manager in your day-to-day job, is that actually the role that you have within Unanet? We're also going to talk about how we create a new project within Unanet. So when you have that new contract that you need to set up a project on, how do you go about doing that? We're also going to talk about how we update some of the more common project information within Unanet. And then, of course, any data that you put into the product, you want to be able to report on. So what are some of those key reports that you're going to want to have set up on your dashboard so that you're able to get to that information so that you understand exactly what all's going on within your project and help lead your business to be the most successful that it can be. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the project administrator roles. Like I said, you might have a job title that is that you're the project manager at your company, but what does that actually mean in terms of roles within Unanet? Well, we know that in Unanet, we're a roles-based system. So you have to have particular roles to be able to do particular things. But there are, as you see here from this screenshot of administrators available on a project, there are a lot of roles. So maybe you say, okay, well, let me go out and look on my preferences, up on that top right in your Unanet, you can go to preferences and you can click on the roles tab and you can see the roles that you have. So you're like, well, yeah, I ought to be able to do what I think I'm supposed to do. And then when you go into Unanet, there are a bunch of grayed out fields. So you can't do the things that you thought you could do. So that sort of gives us a little bit of an identity crisis. Well, who am I, and what is it that I can do within Unanet? So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start thinking about what are the particular roles and what they do. Because if there's something that you are supposed to be responsible for, that you've been assigned to be responsible for updating in Unanet, we want to make sure that you have the role that you are supposed to have. So let's do a review of what those roles actually are. So we had looked at that project administrator screen before, and we saw a listing of different roles. Now, I'm not going to talk about the roles that had the word viewer after them, because those just mean the capability to review reports. But let's look at some other things. There's a billing manager role that's an administrator type, project administrator role, and that simply allows you to have access to that left-hand navigation item on your project profile that allows you to come in and set up your invoice setup. Or if it's a fixed price project, it allows you to set up those fixed price schedules. If it's a time and materials project and you're doing some pre-bill labor, well, it allows you to come in and set those up. That's what that role of billing manager is going to allow you to do. If you have a role of project approver, that means that you are going to be approving the time and or expense on a project. So you have an approval queue. It also allows you to define an alternate project approver on that. So that means on your project dashboards and on your home dashboard, you're going to see an approval queue that allows you to approve the time and or expense on a project. So if you're supposed to be approving project entered time and expenses and you don't have that capability, well, maybe you need another administrator role. The project lead role is similar to a project manager role, but it has more limitations on it. The project lead allows you to go in and update the completed date, a completed percentage if you all are managing a project by physically entering in a percent complete. You can update your ETCs, your estimated time to completion. You can update an estimated total, and then you can actually create and edit tasks under a project, but you can't edit the things that are at the project level. So that's where you end up seeing that view of the project profile where there are lots of grayed out fields. You can read the information, but you're not able to enact any changes upon those pieces. Which then leads us to that sort of full-fledged role within Unanet that's called the project manager. And that allows you to have access to most of the project setup screens, but not to the assignments or plans. And it does allow you to add a new project. Now, when we say it doesn't allow you access to the assignments or the plans, well, that's because there are specific roles for that. If you're going to assign people to the project, you need the role of resource assigner, because that is where you get to create your assignments by going in and saying, hey, this person is allowed to work on this project, or this person is allowed to work on certain tasks within a project. They're allowed to work on that project for a particular period of performance, and you might put some parameters around that they only have certain hours that they're allowed to do. You will determine a labor category or cost element that that person is going to be associated with. So unless you have the resource assigner role, you can't enact that. And I think this is probably one of those things where very often someone who is managing a project out in the field, if you will, has a preconceived notion that because they're a project manager in Unanet that they're able to assign people to their projects. And that's not the case. You must have the resource assigner role in order to be able to do that. And then there's another role that's called the resource planner. So if you have our portfolio license or the portfolio financials license and you are managing the plans on a project, well, you'd have to have that resource planner role. So that's the way that you'd be able to come in and do people plans. So you might need to have that. One other thing that I'd like to also say is that unless you have the bill rate manager role, you will also not see any bill rates associated with your project. So that again is more of an additional type of role that goes along with other roles to be able to actually see bill rate information. So if you're being tasked with driving to a particular P&L on your project, you might be needing to see information regarding your bill rates. So if any of the things that I've talked about so far are things that you don't have access to, but your day-to-day work really demands that you have access to them, then that's something that you need to speak with your chain of command at your office and determine, do you have all the roles available to you that you really need to have to perform your project management work for your actual day-to-day activities. So now that we kind of talked about these different project administrator roles, let's talk about some of the more common things that the project manager role within Unanet actually does. And one of those things is that the project manager role can create new projects. So when you win that new contract, or maybe you have something that's been expanded and you're wanting to just take the one that you've been working on and create a new version of it that maybe you're going to start with the beginning of the next fiscal year or the next calendar year, you'll need to have a new project. Now, the absolute best way to do that, and really a best practice, is to copy an existing project in order to create a new project. This is going to save you a lot of heartache because very often there are fields that you want to have set a particular way to help support things like TCAA compliance, or perhaps a certain way in which that your company sets up government contracts projects, or maybe you have a different way that you set up your commercial projects, or different ways in which you set up fixed price versus T&M. So the best way to do that, as I said, is to copy a project. So what I really want to do now is to just switch over into Unanet and take a look at what that means to copy a project. Now, you might be thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to go and look at my list of projects. I'm going to find one that's similar and I'm going to copy it. Well, that's one approach to it. But let me give you a better approach. I have set up on my project dashboard a list of projects that I'm calling my templates. And I've actually created a little listing that I'm calling my template repository. Now, these are projects that we created within Unanet to have some very specific things so that I can copy them, make the changes that are necessitated for my new project, and then I'll be able to move forward knowing that I have what I need per the contract that I've got sitting in front of me, but also knowing that I have the things that I need that are going to support the particulars that I might have within my company of how I want to have projects set up. So I just want to show you a couple of things in regards to that. I have this one template that I created that I called a direct template. So this is sort of a direct billable T&M project that I have. You'll notice I created my templates with a status of closed, so that means they're going to be inactive. They're not going to be the ones that are going to show up in my listing of projects. But by doing that also, when I copy them, I'm keeping it in a closed status as I'm creating my new project, and only when I'm ready to open it up can I go in and change that status, which makes it kind of useful. So if I looked at this particular T&M template, I'm going to see a few things that are pretty handy for me. One, I've made all my dates beginning of time and end of time. That's what BOT and EOT stand for. So this is going to be a real quick thing for me to see, yeah, this is something I'm going to change, because I'm going to change this to be my contract dates. I also have set my enforced project task dates selection to being checked. And that's going to help ensure that as I'm creating assignments against my project or my tasks, that I'm enforcing that I'm not going to allow things to be entered that are going to go outside of those boundaries. Also, with this particular template, I've said I'm doing this as a time and materials. So it's really kind of good as you're building out that template repository to have ones that coincide with the billing types that you have. I've also left my funding value blank because I would want to be able to enter in those numbers, just as I had left all my budget numbers over here blank as well, because you're going to want to fill those in based on a project. But something that's really important is on this Access tab is I want to make sure that I am not allowing my end users to assign themselves or plan themselves. So on my template, these boxes are unchecked. And so that ensures that I'm not going to allow someone to inadvertently plan or to put time or expenses against this project. I also have made sure, since this is a billable project, that I am not allowing any future charges. This is one of those items for DCAA compliance. So I'm not going to allow any future charges to be put against my billable. I'm also ensuring that on my time and materials that I am looking to a labor category for my bill rate, and I'm making sure that I'm going to be using labor categories on this. So again, these are some of those setups just to make it a little bit easier moving forth. So very much so, my fixed price one that I've set up has been set up in the same manner of having all of the best practices of not allowing future charges. But I also wanted to point out that I could also say whether or not I'm going to require comments. Maybe it's your company's custom to always require comments. So your templates could always ask for it to do that as well. You also could set up tasks that you might want to always be copied across. In this case, I've added tasks onto my fixed price template here and just named them, as milestones and made sure that my dates are beginning of time, end of time. You also can set up, if you're doing your invoicing out of Unanet, you can also set up which type of invoice formats that you want to use within a particular template. So by setting all this up very quickly in advance is really going to allow me to come in here and I have, let's say, that new fixed price project. I can just simply come in here and click on the copy. I know that I am going to be going ahead and pulling over my invoice setup. I have some tasks that I want to bring over with me as well. And then when I say next, all I have to do is now come in here and modify this new project for all of the pieces that are making it distinctive to my contract. Let me also just point out in this template repository on my time and materials one, I also set up like my labor categories as being, let's say that maybe this is my template for all of my GovCon work. I've got only my government labor categories in here already, and then I could remove any that maybe weren't a part of that new contract that I'm setting one up for. So again, this just allows me a lot of power to be able to quickly create new projects based upon a particular preset grouping of templates that I've put together, and then I just saved myself off a list, so I built myself a template repository. Some other things that we have to do very often as project managers is we need to update some information. And one thing that we tend to hear a lot is that when people have tasks and they're setting budgets at their task level, they also want to make sure that their project budget is going to equal the sum of their task budgets. We hear that a lot. Because of things that we hear a lot and we know people want information on, we've built a knowledge center entry that takes you through some steps on how that you can ensure that your task budgets are going to tally up to the sum of your project budgets. So if you're not already used to spending some time in our Knowledge Center, I'd encourage you to go and look at the various pieces of information. We're going to be visiting the Knowledge Center several times during our webinar today. But I wanted to point out that in order to answer that question of can you require that your project budgets be the sum of your task budgets, that the Knowledge Center provides you with a way in which you can do that. It's kind of a manual step, but you can automate it by engaging us to assist you with an integration management utility setup, which can help to automate that process for you. Another thing that project managers very often are doing is there are contract modifications that come into play. And then what we want to do is we want to ensure that we're going into our project and that we're making the types of updates that are going to be necessary for us to not only track information and data appropriately as we're bumping up against our projects, but we also want to make sure that we're tracking maybe some other specifics so that we can draw upon that as we need them. So with that, I'm also going to show you this. And oh, by the way, in the chat window, Stacy is putting some links to these different Knowledge Center and help entries I'm going to be showing you. So if you want to grab those, you can. This is a contract modifications Knowledge Center entry that actually steps you through 3 different options on things that you might want to take into consideration when you have a contract modification and areas that you might want to update within your project. Now, what I'd like to do is just to go over here back into Unanet and show you how that you might be making an update for a contract modification. I'm going to go into one of my projects that I have sitting here. And let's say that I have this project is sitting at a total value of $4.75 million. And so far, I've only been funded for 4.65. But maybe now I'm going to be getting more funding, and they're now taking me all the way up to that. Well, one of the things, of course, that we'd want to do is we're going to have to up our funded value because now we are fully funded. So you're going to make an update to that value. You may also be going in and making updates onto task budgets as well. If you're doing that, you might actually be adding on another additional task. It all depends upon what that particular project has going on. But one thing that is very powerful if you aren't already using it is the notes section of a project. Because within the notes, you can come in here and put in some of that additional information. Like I can say that I have a contract modification, and then I can give some, type in this large freeform text field information about that. But I can also give it a particular note type, like this is a contract mod, and your Unanet Systems admin can add different note types and new statuses. Maybe I'm just going to go ahead and close this out because I'm adding in and making all the changes. I can note, when I completed that. But the thing that is just really wonderful is I can add attachments onto this. So let's say that what I want to do is to add on a document that's my contract modification document. Or maybe I've saved off an email conversation, an email thread, in regards to that as well. I could add as many documents as I need. I could send off information on this to somebody else. Maybe there's another person who's also, maybe I have a project lead if I'm the project manager. Maybe I've assigned people to this project that I want them to know about, but maybe I wouldn't need that. But I might also want to let the contracts person know about it. And I can just put in a comma-separated email address listing of people. You can also report off of your notes as well. They're searchable, and this makes a wonderful asset to the way in which that you're tracking your project and being able to follow through on changes to your project as well. Another thing that very often you're wanting to get in regards to a project or project alerts. How do I know when I've reached a certain value? Do I want to know when I'm within 3 months of the end of this contract, or 85% of my funded value, or 75% of my total labor bill value? Well, you can set alerts on your project, and instead of taking you to the Knowledge Center this time, I'm taking you to our Project Alerts preference page within Unanet Help. This is available to you within your Unanet. If you click Help in the upper right, and you can search for this, or also this link is being provided to you in the chat window by Stacy. But let's go and take a look at what these project alert preferences mean. Well, for one thing, as a project manager, you'll notice that you have an alerts sub-menu item here. And within this allows you to set your own preferences, meaning that for you as a project manager, what are the preferences you're interested in? So I'm interested in seeing, am I beyond 75% of my date range? Have I expended more than 80% of my budget hours? Have I expended more than 78% of my total project cost? I've set that as that I want to be able to see. So these are going to show up, as I've put up here, in my Unanet dashboard. So if I want to view my alerts, I could view them here as well. And I see what my alerts are, and I could go in and look at those and see from the project status report perspective where I'm at. But sometimes on a project itself, we're a little more interested in setting something there, because maybe not everyone is setting their own preferences for some alerts. Maybe what we would like to do is at a project level, say what we want those alerts to be. Now, you can come in here, and if you say use default preferences, then that's actually the default on a project. It's just going to say, if somebody has set an alert preference up here, we're going to use that and send the alerts out based on that. But maybe I want to tighten it down a little more. Maybe I want to do something custom on this. And maybe I'm really wanting to see this time elapsed when I'm at 60% of my date range. Because maybe this is a shorter project and I want to kind of get to know a little bit more about these items. Maybe I'm looking at 70% of my total hours and 50% of my total budget. Now, if I put this custom alert down here on a project, then these alerts are going to go out based upon these custom numbers instead of whatever I might have set as appear as my personal preferences as a project manager. Now, the cool thing is we set these at the project profile level, but I can actually go into a task and say, hey, generate alerts against this particular task based upon the same percentages that are set at the project level. So if the project is set for a custom alert, then whichever tasks that I say, let's do alerts on these tasks as well, it'll do it at whatever the custom level was for that project. If the project is set to use the preferences, then by checking this at the task, it'll also look at whatever the particular project manager preferences were that they set up here on the alerts. So this is really a great way to be able to keep ahead of knowing what is going on within a project. Because recall, within Unanet, you're entering your time, you're entering your expenses, and you have real-time information of knowing where you're at on your projects. Let's see what else we might want to be updating. Updating tasks. Well, we've kind of talked about tasks. Let's look a little bit more at the updating of tasks. Again, I'm just going to take you to a quick topic here within our Knowledge Center that talks about going into tasks and updating them. Now, I'm going to go back over here to projects, and if I just go ahead and look at my list of tasks here, you can see that you're initially presented with a listing of all your tasks, whether they are active or not, and your revised begin and end dates. But sometimes what you're wanting to do is to edit information within a task. Maybe you're interested in coming in here and updating a percent complete. Maybe this is something that you're having to do kind of regularly, especially on your fixed price projects. So you look at this list and you're like, oh, I gotta come in here and I have to go into every one of them and update them. Well, there's a much easier way. So we have our task list here. Now, if I go over here and I say, well, let's just go to search, and the thing I know that I'm updating is my percent complete. And I say, let me include percent complete on what I'm seeing in my list. Well, now I have that here. Now, instead of, I can see this, but I also, instead of having to go into each one individually to edit them, I can hit the double edit pencil at the top. Now, instead of having to go into each one individually, I can come in here and I can update these with what my percent completes currently are. So maybe maybe this is now at 10. I haven't done anything yet on my different testing, or maybe I've started a little bit, maybe I don't even enter that. But I can come in here and update these by hitting that double list pencil and hitting save, and now I've got my updates in without having to go into each one individually. Now maybe I'm doing this very regularly for this project, so I can save this criteria. And I'm just going to say that I'm doing this a lot. I'm going to put it on my home dashboard, and I'm going to call this my Customer 1 10.health IT task list to update. And now when I'm having to come in here, maybe I'm having to do this weekly, or maybe I'm doing this monthly, I have my list right here on my home page that's just going to present this directly to me. I can hit my double pencil, and now I can get this edit and finish it up in a much shorter time frame than coming in, searching for it each time, and going in and individually editing each one. This is a huge time saver. I had someone in a class one time that when we went over how you did this, she had a light bulb go off, and she said, you've saved me about 3 hours a month by showing me this tip. So I hope that it'll be beneficial for many of you that are on the phone today as well. So like I said, we've got all this information in Unanet. So we also need to be able to report on that. So what are some of the key dashboards, key reports that you might want to have saved on your dashboard? And in some of our other Knowledge Center entries and webinars, we show you how to save reports onto your dashboard. Hopefully also your systems administrator has created a shared repository of reports for you that you can just come and grab, and you can bring those over and set them on your dashboard. But let's look at some of these reports that that are sort of the top ones that we have found that people are in need of that are project managers. One of them, I'm going to skip the chart and come back to that one a little later. One of them is an earned value report. And this allows you to view a project's earned value along with a percent complete. So by going into this one here, I'm going to click here. I've got these already queued up. So I'm able to come in here and look at a project, and they are breaking this out by customer. So I'm seeing all of the projects underneath of a customer here, and then I'm able to look at the budgeted work and what was budgeted, what has actually been performed, and then be able to start seeing a variance. I'm able to look in a current period, I'm able to look at cumulative, and I could also be looking at a cost at completion if I'm putting in some of that additional information as well. But this is one of the reports that we find that people like to have sitting on their dashboard and handy for them to use. Another one is the project schedule details report. This is one that allows you to see who's working on what. You know, do you have multiple projects? Do you have large teams? Are you wanting to sort of get a quick view of those people and projects and see what they are doing, looking at a budget to actuals listing as well? Well, this project schedule details, whoops, sorry, I didn't go into it. Let me go back and hit the right one. This project schedule details report then is going to provide that to you. So here I can see that for a particular customer and project, I have these assignments. This particular one doesn't have tasks, so it's giving me all the assignments at the project level. If I have put in budget numbers, then it's going to give me those, and it's going to give me any actuals and any variance as well. This one that has an approximate budget number on that, then I probably have that individual in as an FTE, so I'm approximating how many hours it's going to be across that. If I have tasks that are on a project, then it's going to break that out for me at my task assignment level. So then I'm able to see at a task by task basis what my actuals and my budgets, if I had budget numbers in there as well. So this gives me a very quick view to look at who's assigned, and for a particular period of performance, I'm happen to be looking at the date range of current month. What are my actuals versus my budget, and then my variance between those two. Another report that people are very interested in is the job summary report, the JSR, or the project cost summary, as we call it on the dashboard. And this is where, if you have set up everything, and again, let me just sort of caveat this, you have to have certain things set up on your project in order to see these numbers, because it's not just enough to have the actuals in there. If I don't have budget numbers in there, then of course I'm not going to get a variance, as we saw on the last report I showed you. If I have not set up the project costing within my Unanet system, and you can do that on tracking license and above, meaning like I've set up labor cost elements, I've set up ODC cost elements, I'm tracking my indirect cost rates. If I have those things all set up, then I can look at a project cost summary report and look at those true costs and revenue information. So when I run that JSR report, I'm now able to see, based on project by project, a breakdown of these different cost elements. I'm breaking this out of my direct labor, my subcontractor labor, and my totals, and then of course different buckets of ODCs. I've put in my fringe, overhead, and G&A numbers, and I'm able to look through here and see for a particular period, fiscal year to date, prior fiscal years, everything to see where I'm at. I'm able to see if I've got a backlog over here, meaning have I not planned everything? Have I not assigned and budgeted out everything? You know, do I have a backlog over here that, you know, maybe I'm holding back a little bit of that backlog, thinking we might need to run into that depending upon the scope of the project. Or maybe what I want to do is to use that number to help me ascertain, do I need to go ahead and make some assignments with budgets? Do I need to go ahead and do some planning into the future so that I know whether or not I've accommodated everything that's in that backlog? So this has a lot of wonderful uses to be able to come in here and see what's going on again at a project by project basis. Another report that I don't know that people use very often out in the field, but you should be. We use it a lot within Unanet. And this is the organization activity report. And this allows us to see really our customer information and interactions. So if I come over here and look at my organization activity report, I'm able to see a summarization. This is, you run this only for one customer at a time. I'm able to see a summarization of information up at the top. If I have user-defined fields, I can see that user-defined field information, like maybe their company URL or a description that I've determined to put in against that. But also I can see a quick listing of my contacts and the address. How many projects do I have out here against this this customer? Are they all open? I can see, you know, have I designated them as being red, green, or yellow? How are we doing on those projects? I can see all sorts of information and activities. Here's that contract mod that I entered earlier, and I have that attachment, you know, right here as well that I could get access to if my role allows me to do that. And then I can see all sorts of additional information of timesheet entries and the like on here. So this is a wonderful place to come to see what is the activity that's been going on within a particular customer. I'm going to go back up here now to this chart because a lot of times we have clients that are talking to our customer success managers and they're saying, hey, I kind of like to see a burn rate. Let me be able to really compare my actuals to my budgets and where I'm at. So if you have the portfolio license, then you have access to periodic reports and graphical charts. And so that's where this report lies. This is one where that we are looking at, I'm going to kind of scroll this up a little bit so you can see everything. It's a periodic report, like I said, that are available in our portfolio license. So I'm able to look, I've set this to look at month over month for the entire year of 2017. My actuals are in the yellow. My plans, what I had planned to be done, are in blue. So I'm able really to see, oh, how am I doing? My actuals haven't really been living up to what I had planned. I also have on here these lines, and these are my cumulatives. So I'm tracking my cumulatives. I could click into any one spot on my cumulative listing as well, but this is showing me my cumulative across the entire year to this point. I haven't gotten into December, and of course I've not gotten all the way through November yet either. So I'm looking at my actuals through today on here versus my plans. And so this really does sort of give us a good view here of that burn rate. And at any point on this chart here, I could click into these actuals, and then this is going to present me with my project periodic performance for that particular time frame. So here I can come in and get those actuals across that. I'm looking at everything across the board here on this report, but I could, in my criteria, have selected just to look at one particular customer or one particular project as well. I could also, like I say, click into a point on the graph, and now I'm looking at this as a periodic month over month of my plans versus my actuals here as well. And I can see it month by month and the total where I am currently at as well. I can go back to my chart, drill down into as many different data points as I would like to from this point forward. Another one of those hot reports that you'd want to keep on your dashboard is a project status report. This kind of is another view of giving you sort of that current schedule, costs, and billable transactions that you have going on. So this, again, I'm looking at it within a particular project organization or customer, and then I'm looking at it at a project-by-project basis. And I'm looking at my overall schedule information. It tells me my funded value, my elapsed percentage based upon where I'm at, my percent complete that probably has been entered, and then my particular project metrics over here, looking at it both from a billable perspective and a cost perspective. Again, dependent upon whether you have the bill rate manager role or the cost rate manager role, you may or may not see certain dollar figures. Because I don't know what everyone's roles are that are attending this webinar, I wanted to show you sort of the complete, blown out view of it. Again, if there were any project notes, we would see them also at the bottom here. Again, here's that contract mod that we just entered earlier today, as well as access to view that attachment by downloading it directly from this report, just as we could on our organization activity report also. Now I have one more that I want to show you that I think is really great to have on your dashboard, and this is the project control panel. This is a pretty new report that was added in, and what it is it really is sort of a dashboard within a dashboard, if you will, because the project control panel, which again is available to you if you're on the portfolio license, and this gives you a breakdown. I ran it for pretty much all of my customers here, and this gives us an ability to say, oh, hey, I want to go and look at this project. And if I click on it, it opens up that project profile in another window. I can come back to my project control panel. I can see all sorts of information. I see my dates. I can see what's going on in my current period and year to date, inception to date. I can see my budgets, my funded value, what's remaining, how much has been used. If I've got unit financials, I've got my AR balance in here that's available to me as well. And there are lots of other fields. You can pick and choose in the selection criteria what you want to see. But if I come over here and click on this hamburger, and that actually is the term that we call these three lines, I can blow this out and say, I want to go and look at some particular reports. Some of these we talked about, like the org activity report. Maybe I'm interested in a project. Oops, I guess I don't have any project transactions for this period. But if I have information over here, then I can get into here and start looking at some additional information, like my invoices. Here are all my invoices for that. Maybe I want to come in here and take a peek at that invoice, and then I can go ahead and just click on the eyeglasses, and it will open up. My system was being a little slow. Oh, there we go. So I can open up that invoice and just look right at it as well. So this is really a very powerful thing to have sitting on out here on your dashboard as well, because it just gives you so much information that you can come in and look at for your projects. So with that, I want to point out just a couple more things. We've already talked a little bit about going into the Knowledge Center and getting additional information, but there is an entire section in the Knowledge Center on project management. And this project management section it's broken out into some other sections like EVM and general project management. But within the sections, you also are broken out now into frequently asked questions, webinars, quick topics, quick videos that you might want to watch. But also within here, there's actually a whole little section called the project reference report. Project reference guide. So if I come in here, I can find a project management reference guide that's just right here and handy. And then there's one other thing I want to show you super quick. I know we're running a little bit short on time, and I do want to leave some time for some questions, but anytime that you are in the Knowledge Center, and if there's something that you're wanting to grab and save off for yourself so that you can reference it later, like maybe that project reference guide, you could come over here and click on the little 3 dots, and you could export this out to a PDF if you needed to have this to maybe share with other people, or maybe you're going to create your own sort of reference guide that you're going to utilize internally, and maybe you need something more than what's just on this one page. If you come down to the space tools and go to content tools, you can actually say, I'd like to export out into a PDF, and I would not, you're going to say you want to make it custom on certain pages. You'll first deselect everything because you don't want to get the entire KC. That's a ton of information. But you could come down into here and pick particular things that you wanted to grab. So maybe, if you're interested in getting information on, let me find that project management. So I can do a find. And maybe I want to grab everything that's in this general PM section. And I just maybe grab that, and I just scroll all the way to the bottom, and I can say, okay, I'd like to take that piece, or maybe I just pick sub pieces of it, and you can export that out and create your own little PDF. And then that is going to give you some ability to maybe, if you want to have something that you're utilizing internally, that you can have that as well. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and switch back over here for a time for questions. Stacy, have we had any questions come across in this webinar today?
Oh, yes, we have many questions. So let's see what we can knock out here in 2 or 3 minutes. The first one is, if my contract is set up as multiple projects with no tasks, and the funds are at the contract level, can we roll up for alerts as with billing lead projects?
No, that's one thing we can't do at the current time because you'd be looking at that across multiple projects, and the alerts are within a particular project. But I love where you're going with that question. And with that, one thing I'd like to note is that if there's something functionality like that that would be beneficial to you that isn't currently within Unanet, send an email to suggestions@unanet.com. That will go to our change control board, and they meet regularly, and they take all of the input that we get from our clients who can and then those are the things that become the enhancements for the future. And I think that's a great idea to be able to have that type of capability. So please put that in as a suggestion.
Good point. Okay, next question. Can you customize what falls underneath show alerts when?
Okay, let's go back over to Unanet. Let me pull that up. So the is this here? This part you cannot you can't add to this listing. No. you can't add to this listing. But again, what I would say is send that in as a suggestion, because I'd like to point out that this percentage of funded value was not one of the alerts in the system until I believe it was our 10.1 or 10.2 release. And again, that came as a suggestion from the client base that they'd like to see that as an alert. So if there's something additionally that you would like to see, and if that's something that we're seeing a lot of clients request, then certainly that might bubble up and be one of those things that gets added in a future enhancement.
Okay. Can I, as an administrator, set up project alerts globally for all of our organization projects, or do I have to do it at the project level?
If you're going to do the custom at the project level, then is exactly where you have to have it done. And I'm trying to remember if we can do alerts on an import. I haven't looked at that in a while. Let me just look over here, whoops, real quick and see, is that one that we have available? Project. We'll take a look and get back on that. But if that's part of the import on a project profile, then you could just do an import and get them set up, all at once if you were wanting to do that. But we'll take a peek and see if that's one of those things that you can import or not.
Okay. How do I limit who can see a project note?
Okay. Well, on project notes, you do have the ability to do that. And so let me go over here to, so you can allow access by role is how you do that. So within that note access, you can, just deselect everything and say who's allowed to see.
Okay. Well, we have several others, Gwen, but I don't think we have time today to address all of them. So,
okay.
Yeah, because we need to respect everyone's time. So what we'll do is we'll give the appropriate CSM the questions that we did not get to, and they will actually contact you directly, all of you directly.
Okay, and that's a great way to do that too, because we did run short on time, but being able to have an email or a conversation with your CSM is always beneficial.
That's true. We want to make sure that we mention to not forget about our upcoming Unanet University classes. Not only do we have these 3 foundation options, but we have recently added a virtual learning class for financial administrators, as you can see there. You can always check out the schedule at unanet.com and then click on the services menu and then go to Unanet University on the left. And then this is our talented customer success management team. Again, our goal is to help all of you reach your business goals. So if you're not sure who your CSM is, you may email csm@unanet.com and we'll make sure that your CSM will reach out to you. Thank you, Gwen, for the great content in the Q&A. Once again, the webinar presentation will be available within a week for all of you. And then we'll make sure that the CSM gets back with those that had questions that did not get answered. So thank you so much for joining us today and have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.